Video game sequels, the opportunity to refine your game and learn from your previous mistakes while moving the story along in a meaningful way. Or the opportunity to throw all of that out the window and drop a heinous stinker that's a shell of your previous game and tarnishes your game series forever. If you ran a multi-million-dollar company, wouldn't that second option just sound so tempting? Sequels are some of the biggest events in gaming. They carry more weight than a new series because they already have a huge fan base dying to see what's next for their favorite game and what new characters they could draw fan art of. Before the 8th generation of consoles, popular games would have sequels every 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, and even with these shorter turnaround times, these games were incredible. As the art form developed, this turnaround time grew, and it grew significantly. So what happened to video game sequels, and what's causing this growing gap between installments? The first step is the most obvious. Video games are more complex now. It's no longer a matter of being the fastest kid to impress them. You have to have skills and listen to them talk about their thrift hauls. I think this is describing how girls became more complex. Obviously, we had a jump from 2D to 3D, but we also had a jump from 3D to 3D. Model fidelity increased, map sizes exploded, and the details in these maps became more intricate. With 2D sprites and these simpler 3D models, it was possible for 3 Japanese dudes and the janitor of their office space to create a full game. If you look at your modern spaceman model and his humble environment, you bet you're gonna need multiple teams and potentially hundreds of people to make this possible. Graphics weren't the only way that video games were becoming more complex. The mechanics and gameplay itself was growing. Let's use GTA as an example to see how the scope of each game was growing with every installment. GTA 3 added a new dimension, GTA Vice City added new vehicle types and income generating properties, GTA San Andreas gave us character customization, physical stats, getting fat, and multiplayer. GTA 4 gave us cell phones, the internet, an incredibly detailed and living city, and branching storylines. GTA 5 gave us multiple playable characters with intertwining stories, a robust multiplayer, 50 minigames that you will probably never play, and vehicle customizations so you can make your car look like any car outside of a boba place. I know that's a very general overview of each game's innovations, and I definitely skipped over some major advancements, so you don't need to leave a comment about that. But I think this is a perfect example of how every new feature that was added was more advanced and complex than the previous new feature that was added. Not to mention the NPCs were getting smarter and the missions and stories were getting bigger. And that's just GTA. You could try this with any major game series, but I don't really want to dwell on this topic too much because it's pretty straightforward and we got more important things to discuss. But just take a look at the scope and the visuals of any long-running game. You got Legend of Zelda, Far Cry, Metal Gear Solid, Cooking Mama, not really Pokemon, so let's skip over that, Super Mario. So the scope and complexity of video games was growing, but with more money and bigger, more specialized teams behind each game, shouldn't we be able to keep up with this new scope and maintain that 2 to 4 year turnaround time between each game? Yes, you would think so, but 3 important things happened in the 2000s. First, I got Bendaroos. I really wanted them, so that was pretty awesome. Second, consoles started shipping with built-in hard drives, and third, the internet was becoming widespread. All 3 of these things meant that impossible was now possible. Your console can access additional content outside of the disc you just purchased, and I could write my name in midair and just hang it there. Game updates and DLC were starting to fill the main role of sequels. I know you older siblings can relate to me out there. They could fix and improve the game, they could move the story along, and they can offer additional content to keep the game relevant. Why put all this man and woman power into creating a new game with new assets and probably a new engine when you could just put out an update that fixes that thing that was kind of ruining your game, or release content to make sure your game stays relevant? These things allowed studios to keep their games running longer than ever before, and they were able to make money while doing it. They didn't have to make a new sequel to make sure their company stayed afloat or to get their creative fill. Well, we did it. We solved why video game sequels are taking longer. Except I forgot to mention a really important thing, and it's not my Bendaroos again. So you know how all those things I mentioned were extending video games' life cycles? The maps were bigger and more immersive, the games had more to do, and updates and DLCs were adding more content. There's also one tiny thing I need to mention, and that's multiplayer.
Shut up, pussy.
And that's multiplayer.
Eat a dog wiener, you wiener eater.
And that's multiplayer.
You sound like my poop.
Multiplayer infinitely extends a game's life cycle. Playing against real people will always be more dynamic than playing against NPCs, and that will make your game forever replayable. The modern multiplayer scene is the biggest incentive to not make sequels, and it's also the biggest incentive to pick up a new hobby to relax after work. While DLC will give your game more content, a multiplayer mode will make it a different game every time you play. It's endless content. I know I'm being pretty loose with that, but you get what I'm saying. Sequels serve many purposes, but gaming is a business. Companies are making sequels to make more money. DLC, character skins, gun skins, loot boxes, Brian the Dog Pinata backpack, limited edition items, and battle passes all make money. Almost more money than a sequel. I don't really know. I should have looked that up. But let's be clear, video game sequels are not dead. There's one last thing, I keep saying that, but there's one last thing that kind of encompasses everything that we've talked about, and it'll make sure that these sequels keep happening. The gaming industry is huge and extremely profitable. Let me explain. Games cost so much money to make, more money than you and I spent on our minivans. Don't throw me under the bus as the only guy in this conversation with a minivan. Games are investments now. They can make a huge offensive amount of money, or they can be a devastating loss for a company. The big guys at EA and Ubisoft and all those big scary companies want to make sure each game lands. Development is prolonged because they want to pour time and money into research to understand what new trend they need to fit into their game to get as many people as possible to buy it. Remember the Call of Duty gunplay trend, the crafting trend, the everyone pretending I'm invisible at school for 4 months trend? The battle royale trend. This obviously doesn't apply to every single game that comes out now, but there is a ton of research and development that goes into video games. Shareholders are now part of the development process, whether for better or for worse. It's pretty much always for worse. The industry is seen as a high-risk, high-reward investment, and companies are taking their time and money to make sure they get that high reward. So apparently there are a lot of things that are making video game sequels take longer. The industry has changed so much in the past 20 years. Games are big now. Most of these series are old enough to vote or drink. They're getting married to their high school crush, and you're standing there at the wedding wondering if you're at that age where you should be a little concerned about that lump. You said you'd get checked out if it was there for longer than 2 weeks. And it's been 3 years. The growing size of video games means that the teams behind them have also grown, and rather than make things go by quicker, it's done the opposite because humans are weird and we struggle to work together sometimes. The urgency to create another game to fix that annoying jump thing or make sure your company makes enough money to stay afloat is no longer there because you could just put out an update or paid DLC. This situation is even worse now that multiplayer modes can make you infinite money if you convince kids that they need to buy the big haired, spiky hair anime guy to show their face around school. And as we've learned, video games are investments. That fucking sucks to say. They're products that require a ton of research to make sure they don't flop, and we don't have to fire the whole team, but we will anyways because someone needs a fourth square concrete house. If you enjoyed whatever the fuck this video was, up that subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment about how your favorite game sequel was just so ass and ruined everything for you, and thank you for watching.